The New Orleans Saints quarterback battle isn't looking nearly as one-sided as it once was, and it's all because of Tyler Shough's recent momentum. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. On today's episode of Locked On Saints, injuries are already starting to pile up. The edge rushers continue to flash, and that quarterback battle continues to draw more and more narrow by the day, thanks to the recent momentum of rookie quarterback Tyler Shough. We got all that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everyday or here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Football season is around the corner, so visit the FanDuel app and start placing your futures bets today. The New Orleans Saints are seeing their quarterback battle become more and more intriguing. They're seeing it narrow, and they're seeing this whole thing tighten up quite a bit just over the course of the last week or so, and that continued on Tuesday as the New Orleans Saints got back out to the practice field, where Tyler Shough had another pretty good day out there in Irvine. So I wanted to go over a little bit about what we saw from him, a little bit about what we saw from Spencer Rattler, and how all of this is kind of coming together at this point. What I will say first is that Tyler Shough's momentum is happening at the perfect time. The way that he is building his trajectory at this moment, the way that he is building his confidence at this moment, he is doing it exactly when he needed to, which is as the preseason rolls along, as more and more game situations present themselves, and those game situations can present themselves whether it's because the Saints have been doing scrimmages or because they've been doing what they call it periods, which are basically periods where Kellen Moore calls the offense going up against Brandon Staley, who calls the defense. And of course, you get more of those game situations all over again when it comes to preseason football. And the first time that we ever saw Tyler Shough was in a situational big time game scenario, which was an end of half 2-minute drill where he marched that New Orleans Saints offense down the field into field goal range, ended up getting points on the board later on, of course, after needing to bounce back from that pick six. He did so by throwing that big 54-yard touchdown to Mason Tipton. So he comes out of the preseason game with a lot of momentum in his favor. He had the knee injury. It was bruised knee at the end of that game, but no sweat. He was out there on the practice field on Tuesday. This is the way that the quarterback rotation worked on Tuesday, and it was pretty interesting because the Saints effectively ran two unique team periods, and one period was a set of scripted team drills. The second period was a long set of call-it team drills. You remember those call-its are when Kellen Moore, Brandon Staley calling the offense, calling the defense, more game situation type stuff. And so during the scripted period, we saw Spencer Rattler with the first team, Tyler Shough with the second team, Jake Haener with the third team. Going into the call-it period where the plays were being called, we saw Spencer Rattler with the second team going up against the first team defense, while Tyler Shough was with the first team going up against the second team defense. Now, why they have one of them playing against, with the second team going up against the first team, why the other one's with the first team going up against the second team, I don't understand, but that's okay. It's not for me to understand. That's Kellen Moore and the New Orleans Saints doing what it is that they feel is important for them. But as of right now, I think what I would feel comfortable saying is that by the time that they had moved over to the call-it period, Spencer Rattler had moved to the second team while Tyler Shough moved to the first team, although they were going against the opposite when it comes to the defensive side of the football. So with all that taken into consideration, it felt like this was a big opportunity for Tyler Shough to show what he could do with that first team offense going up against the second team defense. I mean, it's an even better scenario for him in that situation, and he absolutely took advantage of it. He led a multi-play touchdown drive where he completed 5 of his 7 passes, helped take the team from the 35-yard line on the opposing side all the way down to the red zone, and then deep in the red zone, Alvin Kamara taking a quick run to the right for a touchdown. In the process of that scoring drive, Tyler Shough had to convert a 4th down as well, and he did so successfully. And so he completed 10 of his 14 passes on the day. He was efficient and led a touchdown drive. On the other hand, Spencer Rattler started his day off kind of struggling. He was 1 of 6 through the first multiple series of different team drills, whether they be scripted or called, but then ended up going 7 of 10 up in a 16-play drive where he took the team took the offense from the opposing 35, marched them all the way down the field, got into the red zone, and then unfortunately on that 16th play, throws a pass I thought well delivered to Dante Pettis over the middle of the field. The ball careens off of Dante Pettis' hands, and much like you're going to see pretty often here throughout training camp and hopefully for the Saints throughout the season as well, if there's a ball up in the air to be had, Julian Blackmon's going to find it. And that's exactly what happened to get another interception for the young safety. And so it ended up getting picked off there. And that was the end of that drive. Up until then, during that drive, Spencer Rattler had converted or helped to put the team in position to convert a 4th and 1 with a run by Velus Jones Jr. They also converted a 4th and 2 at one point, and then he had completed 7 of 9 passes, much more efficient than his 1 of 6 leading up to that final drive. But then on that final play, in what was the last play of practice, it goes off of Dante Pettis' hands straight up into the air, and Julian Blackmon finds it. So that meant that Spencer Rattler finished that day 8 of 16, so 50% completion percentage there, much lower than his typical completion percentages, which hang around high 60s to low 70s, and the interception. It was his 5th interception of camp. So just taking a look at all of this over the course of the last little bit of time, going all the way back to, I would probably say, the 126 play scrimmage from a couple of weeks ago, it has really felt like Tyler Shough has done a very good job of pushing his momentum and starting to close the gap that still exists probably between him and Spencer Rattler. But right now it's becoming more and more sort of, I don't want to call it unintelligible in terms of what the gap is so far, but certainly, when you have things kind of on your side, the way that Tyler Shough does, if you keep this battle close, it goes a long way for you, right? While Spencer Rattler has to win this battle by a wide margin, Tyler Shough's just got to be close because he doesn't have the year of NFL experience, the 6 NFL starts, the 7 games of NFL experience. He doesn't have that. And so if this is close, despite him not having that, that works in Tyler Shough's favor. And so if Spencer Rattler wants this job and he wants to get back to the point to where he is being discussed as the guy that has the lead, he's got to keep a fair amount of distance. And I don't think that Tuesday's return to the practice field aided Spencer Rattler in that conversation, but I do think that it certainly aided Tyler Shough in the conversation around him closing up this gap a little bit further when it comes to that quarterback battle. I'm so excited for the rest of this week, especially if the Saints do indeed add joint practices with the Los Angeles Rams on Thursday. This could become a very, very fun week while Tyler Shough continues to push and push and push, and while Spencer Rattler is uniquely motivated to keep his distance. It's going to be a very fun week here in Irvine, California. We appreciate you very much, as always, for being here. Coming up next, because we're far from done here, the edge rushers continue to stand out, and I don't just mean the starters. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and they're America's #1 sportsbook for a reason, and it's things like this. For just 24 hours on August 26th, it will officially be FanDuel Futures Day, which is going to be giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're maybe trying to crown your MVP early or pick your division winners, maybe parlay a bunch of dark horses together in the division with a few of those favorites to help you along the way. And of course, you can even pick your Super Bowl winner down the road as well. My pick for MVP right now at plus 1,000, Jaden Daniels, second-year quarterback MVP. It's a thing. Maybe he can be the next one. And I love the Kansas City Chiefs at plus 850 right now. A team that's usually the far and away favorite has some pretty good odds on them at this moment. So visit the FanDuel app today so that you can start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints edge rushers continue to stand out, and I'm not just talking about the starters. Yes, Chase Young, Carl Granderson have both looked fantastic. Cam Jordan has made his contributions, and even down to Tuesday, Chase Young and Carl Granderson stood out with several pressures. There was one play that I believe Chase Young would have had a sack, but it wasn't actually blown dead, all those other pieces. But it's not just the starting edge rushers that have been impressive. It's the depth as well. Fadil Diggs, Chris Rumph, we haven't seen him in a little bit because he's managing injury right now, but we can't forget Jasheem Davis. I really wish we would have gotten a chance to see him against the Chargers. I'm hoping that he makes it back at some point here over the course of this week so he can get back out on the field and actually play in some game action up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that would be outstanding. It'd be a good opportunity for Saints fans to get to see what we've seen from the undrafted free agent. Isaiah Foskey, somebody that continues to execute certain things well, but not the things that stand out on broadcast, not the things that will stand out to, folks watching football games, but that's going to get him some praise in his position room by his coaches. But as of right now, it feels like he's falling behind the rest of these guys when it comes to the impact plays that edge rushers are expected to make by rushing the passer and getting to the passer. And so guys like Fadil Diggs and Chris Rumph just continue to turn in really, really solid days. I had Diggs along with two other players getting sacks on one single play, actually at one point up against Jake Haener, third team offense versus third team defense. It felt like Diggs, Isaiah Stallbird, who had a great day as well up in the preseason game, several special teams tackles, but also had a couple tackles for a loss in the game too. And then you looked at Jonah Williams. Jonah Williams also ended up having an impact play in that moment there on this Tuesday practice. So all three of those players arriving effectively at Jake Haener in what I almost called a sack by the defense. Like it was just not even, it wasn't even close. But a couple of other players still ended up getting pressure as well. Chris Rumph continues to flash. His personality is infectious on the football field. He's just one of those guys that you can tell just loves playing football and loves the game of football. And then adds on top of that production. He's been outstanding really all throughout camp. I mean, we've been talking about him since the very, very beginning of camp saying, hey, he has to make sure that he's not on that, Peyton Turner situation where, you flash here, you flash there, and then otherwise you disappear. Chris Rumph has not been that guy. He has been very consistent here throughout camp and consistently making plays on top of it all. I thought he looked pretty good during the preseason matchup as well. I spoke with defensive coordinator Brandon Staley after practice and kind of asked about these edge rushers as well. And he highlighted Chris Rumph and Fadil Diggs as kind of top performers when it comes to the depth guys, right? The guys that aren't Chase Young, Carl Granderson, and Cam Jordan, where the expectations are already super high. And one of the things that Brandon Staley said specifically around Fadil Diggs is that he's only going to get better the more that he plays. Like that's kind of the missing ingredient for Diggs. It's just exposure and opportunity. He credited Elijah Robinson, the supremely talented and phenomenal defensive line coach, formerly of Texas A&M, went over to Syracuse, I believe, to become their defensive coordinator, if I recall correctly, and has been an awesome recruiter as well. Has recruited some really, really good talent over at Texas A&M in particular. Think back to like DeMarvin Leal and guys like that. And Fadil Diggs is a part of that kind of group. He's a part of that sort of recruiting tree, if you will, from Elijah Robinson. And he's just one of those guys that has shown up, knows what he's really good at, and has learned how to kind of absorb all the information that's coming to him from Brandon Staley, from Jay Rodgers, the New Orleans Saints edge rushers coach, and has really already started to kind of, much like Tyler Shough we were talking about, has already started to kind of build some momentum at the perfect time. Chris Rumph, on the other hand, has been solid all the way throughout. Seen him make some good run plays in terms of setting the edge and holding down the edge, redirecting running backs back to the middle of the defensive line where guys like Devon Godshaw and Christian Boyd or, Colin Saunders have been able to get in there and make some stops, talking about practice, not necessarily that Chargers game where a guy like Devon Godshaw, for instance, didn't play, but in practice, seeing his ability to reroute some of these these running backs by being the edge rusher that can hold sort of that line and hold that edge, right? Forcing them back inside. Then you look at, on top of that, his ability to rush the passer, incredibly athletic guy. He kind of has I want to be careful about saying this because I'm not saying that he's going to produce like him, but he has a similar build to Leonard Floyd, just sort of being this kind of long, lanky, not big and overly muscular or big and like overly, his weight distribution and everything is very kind of lengthy. And he uses that length along with his speed and agility to be able to make plays. And so sometimes he might be, a little bit of ways, trying to run the arc and kind of hit the bend to get around to the quarterback. And he's still able to affect the quarterback just by like sticking out an arm on the inside of that blocker that's in front of him and trying to kind of disrupt a little bit of what the quarterback is trying to do because of that. And so he just has a really good feel for how to utilize his body, how to distribute his weight, how to shift and work, all those other pieces. And I think that we've seen some really, really good things from Chris Rumph out of that. And then you add on top of that the continuous standout nature of Chase Young and Carl Granderson. And these guys have just made play after play after play, pressure after pressure after pressure, and practice after practice after practice. Like, this is just kind of what they've done so far. We didn't get a chance to see them during the preseason game. I know that there was sort of that, we call it our boil water advisory on another show, but one of the big things that we talked about with that is like that thing that kind of makes you groan. And especially with the boil water advisory, it's that thing that makes you groan, and not just groan, but the thing that makes you groan and go, ugh, again. You know what I mean, right? If you live in the Gulf region or in the southern Louisiana, you know what I'm talking about. And when that boil water advisory hits, it's exhausting, it's tired, it's repetitive, it's again. And my version of that this past training, or not training camp, but preseason game, was the mobile quarterback problem, right? Again, Trey Lance being able to get out there and go and pick up some yards and stuff like that. He wasn't able to complete a pass, as successfully, but getting out there and running and picking up yards, all those other things. But we also didn't see the starting defense, right? No Chase Young, no Carl Granderson. How do those guys factor in? How does a guy like Demario Davis factor in? Pete Werner factor in? Justin Reed factor in? Finally said Justin and not Eric. Those guys end up all having an impact on what that sort of mobile quarterback situation looks like in terms of him running and getting outside the pocket, escaping, picking up yards, all those other pieces. But I do think that when we look at this edge rusher group as a whole, we're seeing really good production from these players, at least in practice. We'll have to see what it looks like on game day. And of course, like trying to be as, measured and fair as possible here. Still, the biggest question is, you can get to the quarterback, but can you finish at the quarterback, right? So you still have to be able to show that as well. But I do think that sort of where Brandon Staley has this edge rusher group headed, and where Jay Rodgers has this edge rusher group headed, complemented by Bo Davis, and where he has that interior defensive line headed, where the Saints have some really good talent and depth there all of a sudden, that where all of that is going is headed to a positive place. Whether it's most positive in 2025 or if it's lays the foundation for it to be very positive in 2026, we'll see. But as of right now, where it is versus where it could be, much better situation than what we've seen for this New Orleans Saints team in the past. Not necessarily, still a better situation for New Orleans right now than it has been in the past, but still kind of boil water advisory feeling-ish are the injuries, which are back again. Let's break that down and discuss who the next guys up have been so far as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy, where me and the rest of the Saints squad will be playing fantasy football this year with that Yahoo Fantasy Football app, which is excellent, and you should be too. Whether you're a first-timer or you're a veteran making your millionth league, you're going to find everything you need and more now over at Yahoo Fantasy because of all their new features that they've got rolling out to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness. Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 new features over 28 days in August. So to kick it off, they just dropped the Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football where the lowest scoring team from each week is eliminated until one team is left standing. With the season right around the corner, now is a great time to get your league together and try out this new mode. Or if you're into the classics, you can still play head-to-head public leagues or join a private league as well. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy today at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The more things change, the more they also stay the same, as they say. And that's certainly what we've seen from the New Orleans Saints when it comes to injuries. Now, I'll be honest, right? What we're seeing in terms of injury right now isn't really that different from what you see across the NFL. at this point during training camp, preseason, all that, guys typically get banged up after they see their first action first live action since January or February. That's going to happen. And so we've certainly seen that from New Orleans so far. And it's still a vast improvement from where they were at this point in camp last year. We were wondering if they were going to be able to field a starting lineup during the season, during the offseason last season, with a player leaving practice every single day during training camp. So just wanted to give you some updates on where things stand for New Orleans. And look, offensive line injuries continue to be an issue for New Orleans. They've already lost Nick Saldiveri for the season. Well, now they've also lost Will Clapp due to a Liz Frank injury, according to Mike Garafolo over with NFL Network. So he is now done for the season. And that's a big hit for New Orleans because they were really looking at Will Clapp to be one of those guys that could bring them some veteran depth to help them out and help to shore up that offensive line, because there's going to be injuries on the offensive line over the course of the season. It's going to happen. You're not going to carry all 5 starting offensive linemen. No team in the NFL is going to, or maybe all but maybe 1 or 2 teams, won't. And so for New Orleans, that's a big loss because that was a guy that was supposed to really help them out there. Well, now he's done for the season. The Saints also saw Mason Pline's season end as well during that preseason game, but they also waived him with an injury designation. So I guess there's a chance that he reverts to their injured reserve. Same thing happened with wide receiver Chris Tyree as well. So those guys are managing injuries, things like that, but might end up reverting to the injured reserve. So those are players whose seasons are effectively over, or at least their time with the New Orleans Saints is over in any case, in Chris Tyree and Mason Pline's case. But there are also some players that are expected to miss some time. The one that's expected to miss kind of the most time right now, as I gather it, is Bub Means, dealing with an ankle injury. Remember, it was a week 8 ankle injury last season that ended his season early. It was the injury plus a setback that ended his rookie season early. He was super excited to get back out on the field for his second year in this new offense and was cleared and ready to go, all that. Now, another ankle injury, right foot. And this one, he's getting a second opinion on, but the expectation is that he's going to miss quite a bit of time here. The second opinion is to see the best way to go forward, which might mean that surgery was recommended and he might want to try to avoid surgery. I'm speculating, I'm guessing that's typically what we see when there's a second opinion involved, but certainly we'll continue to follow that and see how things go for him. A couple players that aren't going to miss a lot of time, but are going to see an extended absence here over the course of maybe the preseason going into the regular season is Trevor Penning, dealing with a foot injury. I think his foot got stepped on late in his 20 rep stay in that preseason game, but doesn't seem like there's a major injury there. He should be back at some point within the next quote unquote few weeks is what Ian Rappaport over at NFL Network had mentioned. And then we saw Alontae Taylor has not been around either. He wasn't present or dressed for the preseason game. And then he wasn't out there on Tuesday. Come to find out, he had suffered a groin injury during Friday's practice. So he's going to miss, quote, a little while, according to Kellen Moore in that situation. So a couple of those guys, extended absences. Bub Means maybe the most extended out of those, but not season-ending situations. A few guys that are on their way back. Devin Neal, who continues to work off to the side, coming back from a hamstring injury. JT Gray doing the same thing, also coming back from a hamstring injury. And then we'll also see Jashin Davis, the undrafted free agent edge rusher out of Wake Forest, who's been excellent here throughout camp. He's dealing right now with an undisclosed injury, but is on his way back from that injury. So good news there. Couple of things that you should know, or a couple of names that you should get an update on here. Tight ends Taysom Hill and Foster Morrow, according to Kellen Moore, are not getting back to the field anytime soon. So I would not expect those guys to be ready to go week 1. I would not expect, and this has always been the case with Taysom Hill, I wouldn't expect him to be ready until late in the season anyway. But Foster Morrow, definitely one to continue to watch out for and keep an eye out on, because he's wanting to get back on the field as quickly as possible. I'm sure Taysom Hill is as well, but Taysom Hill, for whatever reason, has always been sort of deemed as a more late season kind of a situation. So we'll see what happens with those guys. Now, that's all the kind of attrition there. So who are the guys that are stepping up into their roles? Well, a couple of updates for you there. With Will Clapp out as the backup center, Torricelli Simpkins stepped in to be the second team center and looked really good again on Tuesday. So Saints got really, I want to call it lucky there but it's also really good on the scouting staff, picking him out as an undrafted free agent and bringing him in out of South Carolina. But remember, the whole idea with him was for him to be kind of a guard. And so he's been able to come in and do some work as a center and really help them out. So they good roll of the dice there with Torricelli Simpkins, who, as long as he stays healthy and continues doing exactly what he's doing right now, like if he doesn't get a lick better, he makes a 53-man roster. But hopefully you see him continue to improve as well. On the offensive line as well, with Trevor Penning out for a little while, it was Dylan Radins who stepped in at left guard. That's more his speed. Playing at tackle, he struggled quite a bit over the course of that preseason game, but they brought him in to be a guy that helped shore up the interior offensive line, so he'll get his opportunities there. And then with Alante Taylor out, we saw Terrell Burgess as well as Ugo Amadi each step into that slot role. Really cool to see Terrell Burgess there, though, of course, the star role guy that's got some familiarity with Brandon Staley. So those are some of the next men up, if you will. Saints also went through some transactions. They brought back tight end Seth Green. They brought in Roderick Daniels as well, SMU wide receiver, 5'10", 180 pounds, kind of speedy, kind of just immediately replaces Chris Tyree. Jaden Perry, 6'5", 308 pound defensive interior lineman, really, really good ad there. We'll see what happens there. And then Mike Panashuk coming in and bringing some more of that versatility on the offensive line and experience on the offensive line, like that pickup for New Orleans as well. Probably all camp guys, but still what you need right now going into the preseason, especially. All right, coming up in so later on today, we'll have our squad show, 9 p.m. Central Time, get you caught up on everything from camp, and I'll have a fresh episode for you the very next day. Don't forget, you can catch us every single Monday through Friday as well over on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Make sure you come through for that. We appreciate you very much. As always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.